Okay, I think we're live. I never know these things because I haven't done a live stream since the beginning of the season, but I'm going to assume I'm live. But as usual, I'll wait for some kind soul in chat to let me know that you can hear me and everything, because that I remember that happening on the deadline stream last time. That I was chatting away to myself for like a minute or two and no one could hear me. So can I please get some indication? Can you hear me loud and clear? Yes, Michael. Thanks for the heads up. Looks like we're all good. I'm alive. Okay, well, that's also good to know. Not just that you can hear me, but I am in fact not dead. That's a good start to the stream. Let's keep it going. Thanks very much, guys. I might have to move my stream chat over here a bit. Hang on, let me just change that around because otherwise I can't. I'm twisting my neck too much. There we go. Right, so yeah, polls up already. It looks like Verstappen's the favourite, and have to say, kind of agree with you. I mean, I've just watched FP3. I'm sure most of you have watched FP3 as well. And I can't lie, I'm a little bit disappointed. A little bit disappointed from a fantasy perspective. I still think it'll be quite an interesting fight for pole. I do think like someone like Fernando Alonso is definitely right up there. You know, in FP3, let's have a quick look at the times actually. Let's get it up straight away. So here we are. These are the results: FP1, FP2, FP3. Just in case you haven't seen it, and even if you have, you might want to be looking at it anyway. I've averaged out, as you can see, the hypothetical qualifying, which puts Max Verstappen on pole. I will say, however, you know, Fernando Alonso down there in P7 on the hypothetical. It's a little bit out of position because he didn't really get to make that final run in FP3. The final 10 minutes or so were disrupted with yellow flag and then finally the red flag. So I think Fernando Alonso is definitely way higher up than that P7 suggests on the hypothetical qualifying. So yeah, I do think it's going to be an exciting qualifying for sure. I'm looking forward to watching it. But obviously we've got some decisions to make before we get into that. And yeah, I do think I'm disappointed though, like I say, because in my team selection video I did on Wednesday, I was fully on board with bringing in someone like Charles Leclerc, and now having watched FP3, it's making me think like the Ferraris have just gone the wrong direction, haven't they? They haven't nailed the setup. Maybe they can make changes in time before qualifying, but then they don't have any time to actually test that out, and then they're locked in with qualifying, and you just got to hope that the setup is okay. I do think they'll improve slightly from what they were doing in FP3. You can see, FP3 they finished Carlos Sainz in P4, Charles Leclerc down there in P7, which is not where you expect him to see. Particularly Charles Leclerc is normally extremely fast around these streets. And I do expect Charles Leclerc to still be a possibility for pole, but it's much less likely than what I was thinking recently. So it makes me much less likely to put him in my team, which is annoying because I was seriously considering putting him like Max Verstappen, having Max Verstappen, Leclerc, Alonso like in my team, and then just putting like the autopilot on possibly, and then whoever wins, out of those three, which is probably going to be those three, then I'll max out the points for them. I'm now leaning much further away from the autopilot on this particular race because I'm just not convinced by the Ferraris. I think they've had, I don't know, I just don't trust them. Is the bottom line. Don't trust them. So if we go back to the team again, this is my current team at the moment. I was very much considering doing something. Well, I'll show you what I was considering doing. Like from Swiss by value. This is what I was considering, bringing in Leclerc and then probably bringing in Hulkenberg, because I think he might be the best budget this week. And having a team like this, this does obviously mean the double budget, but then if I was going with the autopilot, then, the likelihood is that one of the, Perez, not having Perez is a bit of a bummer, but can't have everyone. The likelihood is that maybe Leclerc, Verstappen or Alonso would be most likely to win, and then I put autopilot on, double up whoever wins and be happy with it. But I just don't think the Ferraris are quite there. Like I say, with the setup changes that they've made, I'm just not convinced by it. And Carlos Sainz had that crash yesterday as well. Don't know how confident he's going. That said, Carlos Sainz, he is still something to be considered because here he is on the hypothetical P2, only separated by Max Verstappen because he finished lower down in FP3 than Max Verstappen. He actually has the same average as Max Verstappen though across the 3 sessions. So Carlos Sainz is like a little bit of a dark horse, so to speak. For pole as well, possibly. So we could, if you're really desperate, and I am a little bit desperate, if we are a little bit desperate to have some variation in our teams, we could go with Carlos Sainz, and then we could have, either Pierre Gasly or Lance Stroll. I think Gasly's done all right, and I think Stroll is probably the better option in that price bracket. I really, really wish, I'll tell you what I wish, I'm sorry by the way, I will be looking at the chat in just a minute, but I'm just going over my initial thoughts, get that spilled out into you guys, and then I'll be going through the chat and answering questions, but I just want to give you my initial reaction basically to FP3. I really am I wish Lando Norris was cheaper. I wish Lando Norris was cheaper. I just want to go back again to the spreadsheet. Lando Norris here in the hypothetical qualifying in P5. Like I said, I do think Fernando Alonso will probably be higher up than him, contending for pole. So I think Lando Norris is more likely P6, P7, P8. But I do think Lando Norris, he's a driver I trust. He's done well around Monaco in the past. He's got a podium, I want to say, the year before last. Correct me if I'm wrong. I do think Lando Norris is really good, and we know, any one of my viewers from over the last year know that I'm really hot on Lando Norris doing well from practice into qualifying. And again, I'm going to go, I know I bleat on about this a little bit, but if we have a look at the quali predictor from last year, you can see Lando Norris over here on the left hand side with an average delta from the hypothetical of 1.8, which is really accurate when you consider, some races he was really high, some races really low, sometimes in the middle, up and down. We expect Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz, etc., and Latifi to be sort of P1, P2, and then in Latifi's case P19, P20. So they're going to be accurate. But Lando Norris is definitely the best of the rest for in terms of accuracy, and he's also started off reasonably accurate this season. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Lando Norris in that. Definitely in Q3, and possibly pushing towards the top 5. But I think that might be a little bit too much for the McLaren. I don't know, but I do think that that Lando Norris would be a great option this weekend. And I've pressed the wrong button on my screen. There we go. So let's go back here. So yeah, unfortunately, like I say, he's 11 million. If he was a bit cheaper, we could get him in here. I don't think there's any way really to get him in. 3 million, that leaves me going with Sargent, and I'm still 0.6, so I just can't get a team like this. It's just it's annoying. The only other option I could really go, if you want to avoid the budgets entirely, I guess, is like a team like this, and that actually looks kind of alright as well. But it does mean you lose Perez. But I guess you can weigh up: is Perez going to basically, it's kind of like Perez versus a couple of budgets, or Perez versus Perez versus I can't even speak. Perez plus a budget versus Norris and Gasly. And although I think both Norris and Gasly are going to have good races, possibly, particularly Lando Norris, and I think Alpine look kind of alright around here as well. I'm not sure that even if Norris and Gasly have good races and they finish like P7, P8 or P9, which would be a really good race for them, and I wouldn't be surprised if they finish there, but in terms of fantasy, they're still not going to be scoring many points compared to Perez, who, if he gets a podium, will probably score more than Lando Norris plus Gasly combined. So it's a bit of a frustrating one, but I do think Lando Norris is an interesting option if you can somehow warp your team to put him in. But I don't know. It's a tough one. It's certainly a tough one. I'm going to have a quick look at the chat because I've neglected you guys. I'm sorry. Let's have a look in the chat. I'm just going to have a read through and see what's going on. What the hell, Ferrari from Michael? Yep, that is indeed I'm disappointed that they just haven't got it together. They obviously, if you watched FP3, you could hear Leclerc and Sainz just complaining about the swimming pool bit and how their car feels unstable. And if you watch them go through, you can see their car literally wobbling around, which is pretty terrifying, probably for them as well as fantasy managers if you own them. You don't really want to be going through the tight streets of Monaco wobbling around. We've seen several incidents already. We've seen Albon, we've seen Sainz, we've seen Hamilton. Hamilton, one of the most reliable sort of drivers on the entire grid, and he caused a red flag at the end of FP3, so it can happen to anyone. And if you're in a car that has already, Sainz and Leclerc have already expressed that it's a trickier car to drive this year as opposed to last year, and we've already seen it wobbling around, and their setup doesn't look like they've got it right, then it does certainly concern me, and it makes me want to avoid the Ferraris, which is really disappointing, like I say, because I do think that they were really a viable option going into this weekend, and they've just kind of not delivered. And that's not to say that they can't turn it around and have a good have a good qualifying and a race, but they haven't given me enough faith in them to put them in the team. So I think I'm going to be going without the Ferraris most likely. This is definitely still an option for me, like this little non-budget option. Like I say, it looks pretty good, but it does go without Perez, and Perez is a contender for pole and the win. And if he gets the pole and the win, then you're looking at 30 or 40 points straight off the bat. And can the likes of Norris and Gasly combined get to 40 points. I really don't think so. So the likelihood is I will probably stick with the template, which makes me sad. It makes me sad. So this is my, like I said, I'll go back. This is my kind of original team here with the triple up on the Ferraris. God no, the triple up on the Red Bulls and the Aston Martins with the budget driver of Albon. The budget driver is obviously an interesting discussion point, which we'll get into in a minute. But I'm just going to go back to the chat because again, I've neglected you guys. I'm sorry. So let's have a look through. Ferrari look trash. Yep. But I count on them to qualify in front. So you've still got Bar Cavis. You've still got some faith in the Ferraris to qualify ahead of the Red Bulls. That's interesting because every time Max Verstappen went out on a hot lap, I was just like, poof. It's like purple, purple, purple. Yep. There goes Max. It's just like, I don't know. It is an interesting one though, and I do think the track is ramping up, and we could see problems like yellow flags, red flags completely screw people over. Which does also lead me on to my next point, which is the possibility, like another reason against using the autopilot chip, leaves you more open because you only use one chip at a time, leaves you more open to using the final fix chip. And if something does go wrong, there's lots of traffic, there could be accidents, something could go wrong in qualifying, which leads, for example, worst case scenario for our team is that Max Verstappen crashes out of Q1 and he qualifies like P20, which on any other track would be kind of fine because you'd expect him to just carve through the field, pick up overtake points, pick up positions gained, and he'd finish on like 60 points or something. However, I just don't see it happening on Monaco. I don't know, I feel like he'll definitely make up a few places, but I find it very unlikely he's going to fight his way back to like a podium or something. You never know. This is Max Verstappen and he is in the Red Bull, which is an amazing car. But in Monaco, I just think it's going to be too much. So I think if one of the top drivers in our team, like Perez or Verstappen, do have a terrible qualifying because of whatever reason, then I think having the opportunity to use the final fix chip this weekend is definitely something I want open to myself. So yeah, it's something I'm definitely considering. Let's go back to the chat for a second. Perm Bowden is getting bored of this fantasy season. Yeah, until top teams get more upfront, options are limited. The price structure, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to bleat on about it, but the price structure, unfortunately, is very unfortunate. Because let's just imagine, hypothetically, everyone was like 20 million. It would be amazing for our teams. Like it would be, I mean, not literally everyone 20 million, but I mean like all the best drivers. So people were appropriately priced. Like Max Verstappen should be like 30, Fernando Alonso should be 20, Leclerc probably 20. Hamilton 20, like all the people underneath Verstappen, but above the midfield should be like around that 20 million mark, and then we could interchange them according to how we think it's going to be. But the trouble is, like Aston Martin are like the second best team, and the prices of their drivers are basically just above the budget drivers, so it makes a bit of a joke. So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, but we just have to be patient and hope that A, the prices change, even though I don't think they will, and B, that other teams bring upgrades and it forces us to make changes. And like I said, that's why I'm really disappointed this weekend that the Ferraris haven't quite come to their full potential, because I do think that this was definitely an opportunity for some variation in our team. So yeah, Michael was saying that you were putting the DRS on Charles. I was half considering it, I'm not going to lie, but I think it's just going to stick on Max Verstappen now, the DRS. And let's quickly go back through the chat. Ferrari quality sims were ruined by Hamilton. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's quality sims at the end there were ruined by Hamilton, and also Kevin Magnussen caused him some yellow flags for a couple of minutes whilst he very, very slowly reversed out of that first corner. Don't know what was going on there. I guess, like the commentators say, maybe he's trying to save the tyres or whatever, but come on, like, you're just wasting time, and it's a bit frustrating. So yeah, we didn't really see the full potential of all the cars in FP3, so maybe the Ferraris are faster than we think, but from what I've seen so far, the Ferrari's not impressed, so... yeah, Hamilton was literally flying. Yeah, well, his car was. Luckily, he wasn't in it. Otherwise, that'd be a bit scary. Can we just spam F1 to ask them to start changing prices? Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I think we have been doing that. I mean, if you all want to get on board with that, let's go for it. Let's spam F1 and tell them to change the prices. I don't think they're going to listen to us though. Like, I doubt the person that runs the F1, like the admin guy that runs F1 Twitter or whatever, is probably nothing to do with F1 fantasy. So it's probably a waste of time. But there you go. K-Mag and Hamilton, yeah, that's what I was just talking about, ruining the... You can go Norris and Leclerc if you go Ferrari constructor, yeah, but no, that was something I was considering. In fact, I'll show you another consideration that I was thinking about before Ferrari decided to forget to turn up. We do this. Yeah, so, oops, get Norris in there. So there's something like that. That would use up 3 subs. And it actually looks quite good. Actually, I mean, I came up with this team actually last night, and I looked at it and I was just like, I like it. And this has got really strong potential, particularly if Norris is doing well. And I still think it has got good potential. And it is, this has got this is potentially an autopilot team. If I saw one, I mean, I'd rather have Leclerc over Sainz, but there's no way. I mean, there is a way. I guess I could probably can I afford him? Let's have a look. 29 million. Yeah, I probably could afford Leclerc, and then I'd have some sort of budget option. 7.8 can't quite get to Pierre Gasly, unfortunately. So I'd probably go Valtteri Bottas, to be honest, because he looked alright and he did alright in the last season or two over here. So you could also go with a team like this and go autopilot. But I don't know. I mean, it looks great, but then you realise that there's no Red Bull constructor and you don't have Perez in your team, and suddenly it's like, oh god, I'm not going to get any points from this. But yeah, I like the look of the team for sure. I mean, every team looks great when you don't include a budget driver. But yeah, I'm not. I don't know. Like I say, if the Ferraris were looking much stronger, then I think this would be something I'd heavily consider, and it was something I was heavily considering up until FP3 pretty much. But I think FP3's really put the dampener on me making too drastic a change. Let's have another look in the chat because I think I've missed a bunch of stuff. I feel like this week's safe week to use Limitless. Safe weeks to use Limitless. I'm not sure. I think there's still some rain forecast for the race tomorrow, so I'm not sure about using Limitless. I would rather use Limitless on like a sprint race that's like most likely going to be dry, and like maybe Austria in a few races time. Limitless could be a decent one to use. I'm not using Limitless this weekend because I think it's just too risky. I need to keep an eye on the time actually, because I always do this. I always think, am I going to miss the deadline? No, we're good. We've got like 40 minutes. So let's have a look at this poll quickly before we go. So everyone's like, well, not everyone, 71% of you are saying that Verstappen's going to get pole. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be another one of those races where Red Bull are dominant. So let's just reset this before I accidentally like confirm it or something. That would be horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. Well, you never know. It might not be horrendous. Could be like a bit of a luck my way into a decent team. But what have I done here? Bottas, we don't want you in there. Where's Perez gone? Get back in here. Uncle Checo. And then down here. So yeah, I guess we should probably touch on the budget drivers. So in terms of budget drivers, like I said, this is my team at the moment with Albon on there. The Williams really haven't looked great. If we go back to the results here, the Williams really hasn't looked that great. Albon obviously had that big crash yesterday. Which probably dented his confidence somewhat. But if we look at the hypothetical qualifying, Sargent all the way down P20, Alexander Albon 15. I do think Albon would probably be alright, and he'll probably qualify in that sort of P12, P13 sort of region maybe, if he can push it. But in general, the race pace and the quality pace just doesn't look great. So I'm not sure I'm going to keep Albon. If this was any other track, then I think it'd be fine. That's because I trust Albon. If he stays out of trouble from the back of the race, he can make up positions in the race, like through either overtakes or positions gained. But I think on this week, I think the budget driver is kind of a bit back to front, and we want to look at who's going to qualify higher. And I think the best option for qualifying higher is likely Hulkenberg. Tsunoda's in for a shout as well, but Guan Yu Zhou hasn't impressed so far in terms of actual qualifying. And the likes of De Vries and Sargent, I'm not touching. They don't instill me with any confidence at the moment. So yeah, I think the budget for me, if I'm going to go with the template team, will be sort of between Hulkenberg and Tsunoda. And Tsunoda's definitely impressed me for sure. And down here in P14, what did he do last year? And we go back up, Tsunoda. Oh, P17. I'm not great. Where did he qualify? P11. Is he? Yeah, okay. P11 as well. So he's quite even there. So look at the quality predictor, see how accurate he is this year. Oh, pretty accurate actually. 2.3. So yeah, so notice it's been like pretty on there. And 3 times out of 4 that I've recorded this on, he's actually improved his time from practice into quali. So let's have a look back at Monaco again. So if we say he's fairly accurate within 2 or 3 positions and he improves, then we could see Tsunoda sort of on the periphery of Q3. I do think Tsunoda is an interesting option. And Hulkenberg, like I say, if we go back to the quality predictor again, Hulkenberg is super accurate so far this season. I know it's a small sample size, and last year the Hasses weren't very accurate. But Hulkenberg, and again, Magnussen also not very accurate so far this season. But yeah, Hulkenberg very accurate. He's a couple of times he's got exactly spot on his predicted position. A couple of times also was worse than that predicted position, and the Hasses haven't looked especially great, to be honest. But I think his average on this particular occasion is hampered by his P20 and FP1. I didn't actually see FP1 because I was at work at the time. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, but you can see he only had 17 laps there in FP1, so he must have had some sort of issue, if someone can enlighten me. But yeah, I do think that Hulkenberg is probably a little bit higher up than the P16 suggests, and similarly, I think Tsunoda could be a little bit higher up than P14 suggests. So I think it's kind of tight between Tsunoda and Hulkenberg. Across the season so far, I think Hulkenberg has been the stronger qualifier. But I don't know. I've got like the Japanese kind of design on my t-shirt today, and maybe I should go with the Japanese driver. I don't know. This is what it boils down to. This is what F1 fantasy has reduced me to this year. I'm going to make my picks based off the clothes I'm wearing. Right, let's go back to see the chat, because I'm probably neglecting you guys again. Can you? Yeah, we've read that bit already. Hamilton's sector 1 is deceptive. He had too much speed going into Mirabeau, which deflated his sector time. Deflated or inflated? Don't know. I suppose depends which way you look at it. Yeah, we're still pretty fast though. Maybe not purple. Yeah, so he did get that purple sector 1, like we touched on. But I think the track just gets ramped up as the session goes on, and I think if we saw the end of FP3, without the red flag, then we probably would have seen the likes of Verstappen and Alonso like pushing further and over, rubbing out the purples from Hamilton. Probably. I don't know. It's hard to say, because obviously Mercedes have come with quite a big upgrade package, which we don't really know anything about, to be honest. It looks like it's fine. The car doesn't look like it's difficult to drive in particular. It doesn't look like they're really struggling. They've gone completely different ways of setups by the looks of it between George and Lewis, trying different things out, and practice times are a bit erratic, and I think Hamilton's done alright. So I think Mercedes could do alright, but there's no way I'm putting them in my team this week. I want to see much more from them. So as for quali pace, I was finding myself going back to Hulkenberg. This year he's had a pretty good quali. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, for me, like I say, I've been talking about the budget picks. I think it is between Tsunoda and Hulkenberg for me. It's a tough one to call, really. It's a tough one to call. I think I'll put Hulkenberg in there for a minute, but what do you guys suggest? So, shall we end this poll and get your opinion? Because I think it's pretty clear. Everyone thinks, the majority of you think that Verstappen's going to get this poll. So let's do another poll, and I'll get your opinion on the best budget driver. Best budget. Let's have a look. So let's keep this short and sweet. And those are my two favourite options. Oh my god, I really cannot spell a 4-letter word. There we go. Who else is a contender? I mean, maybe Joe. I'm asking this poll after I've influenced you all by my chit chat. I think Albon is still an option, actually. I think it's got between these four. My favourite would be the top two, which would be Hulkenberg and Yuki. But I'll pose the question to you guys, and you can let me know what you think. We'll come back to the poll in a minute to see what you guys are thinking. Let's have a look back through the chat, because I keep missing out what's going on. So, took a risk, didn't do. Sainz or Leclerc? That's an interesting question. Normally I'll be like, yeah, Leclerc, kind of easy. However, Sainz, like I say, has looked quite strong. If we go back and have a look, like I said, I don't know if you joined the stream a bit later, and what I was saying earlier, that Carlos Sainz here in P2 actually matched the average of Max Verstappen. Like I say, he was basically hypothetically P1. He's only P2 because Max Verstappen got a better time in FP3, which is probably, in terms of setup, closer to what we're going to be having in qualifying. So yeah, I do think Carlos Sainz is legitimately an option, and I have, like I say, already touched on the fact that we could potentially get Carlos Sainz in our team over Perez, but I don't know. It's a tough one, and then it still doesn't leave me enough room to get Lando Norris. So yeah, I don't know. It's just the pricing is just a little bit too wonky, and it's like, is it just an unnecessary change? Like, is Perez just a better option? Like, probably. Like, I don't know. It's a tough call. What's the ownership here? If we look at that, 23% versus 47%. So it is quite a nice differential if you go Carlos Sainz over Sergio Perez. If he does do well, obviously there's no guarantee he's going to do well. And we know Perez is decent around street circuits. So yeah, tough call between Leclerc and Sainz. Normally I would definitely say Leclerc, and I think it's very, very tight, and based on budget, in terms of actual budget, if you can get to Leclerc, I think I'd still go Leclerc, depending on the rest of your team. But if you don't have the budget, or you need to change your team too much in order to get Leclerc, I think Carlos Sainz is an absolutely fine second option. That's kind of my answer to that question. What else we got in here? We will be minimal rain even if it arrives. Yeah, I don't think it was definitely not going to rain in qualifying by the looks of it, unless it materialises out of nowhere. As for the forecast, I did look a little while ago, and it's supposed to be raining in the afternoon. I don't know how heavy it's going to be though. I'm no expert. We need Rob. Rob, where are you, our weatherman? Do you think Stroll is a valid pick? There is a zero tolerance for, I don't know, you sort of for mistakes. Yeah, I still think Stroll is a solid pick. I mean, you saw him in FP3, had a couple of purple sectors in there. I feel like Stroll is like, I know he's in a really great car this year, so it's easy to say this, but I do think Stroll has really stepped up a bit this year. I mean, last year he was definitely Mr. Reliable. He was, he never really got into any scuffs. I mean, yeah, we had a couple of incidents where he nearly put like Vettel in the wall in Brazil and that sort of thing, but I think in general Lance Stroll is a pretty safe, reliable driver, and I quite like having him in my team. I feel like he's someone I can trust, and the fact that he's just incidentally in probably the second best car on the grid, then it's like at 7.7 million, I think I have no trouble having him in my team. What else we got? Have you used your no negative chip yet? Thoughts on using it today? Yeah, I have used my no negative chip, unfortunately. I used it back in Australia, which in hindsight was kind of an alright option, but it didn't actually gain me anything, which was a bit annoying. Despite the massive pile up at the end, because all the people that did crash out at the end didn't actually get their -20 for DNF because they completed 90+% of the race. So yeah, unfortunately for me, I've used my no negative chip. If you haven't used your no negative chip, I think it's potentially an option in this race, particularly if there is, if you want to look a bit more into the weather forecast and see how much trouble there is in particular and how much risk there is of rain. I think it could be an option, but I wouldn't be. I don't know. I feel like if I'm going to use a chip, it's team dependent, obviously. But chip wise for me, I think it's between autopilot. If you want to go with a team, maybe like the one I've got on screen at the moment. If you want to go edge your bets a bit and go Carlos Sainz over Perez, for example, and the other chip would be Final Fix, and I'm kind of leaning more towards the Final Fix option because of what I said earlier. Like I said, if you didn't catch what I said earlier, I think the Final Fix option is a really nice option to have on this particular race because it's quite a unique set of circumstances. Excuse me, I'm going to choke to death in a minute. Right. Yeah, I do think that the Final Fix is a nice option to have because if something happens to one of our top drivers in our team, like a Perez, like a Max Verstappen, even Fernando Alonso potentially, I do think that if they have a bad qualifying for whatever reason, red flags, crashing, traffic, whatever the reason is. We also heard, interestingly, James Vowles for Williams on, if you watched FP3, he was talking about how the tyres only have one good lap in them, and then they just tail off, and you can't get the pace out of them, which is a very interesting insight. So it might mean that in Q1 in particular, if you mess up your first go at it, then you are going to put a new set of tyres on. If anything happens then, if there's more yellow flags, red flags, traffic later on in the session, we could see someone like Max Verstappen getting completely and utterly screwed, and just having the option of a Final Fix chip for that possibility, I quite like to have that in my pocket. Of course, if the likes of Verstappen and Perez and everyone, all the top drivers up there, if they all have a great qualifying and they all finish, in the top sort of 5, then I wouldn't bother using the Final Fix. I'm almost certainly not going to use it to switch out a budget option for the sake of maybe a couple of points, if that. So I would save it for one of the big drivers, but it might end up using no chip at all, and in which case, fine, we'll just use the Final Fix down the line when it becomes appropriate. But I like having that option on this weekend, I think. Alright, excuse me. Oh dear, still getting over that little bit of a cold. Let's have a look at the back of the chat, because I'm super slow at keeping up with you guys. Let's have a look at the poll quickly, actually. Oh yeah, Hulkenberg leading the way. Hulkenberg followed by Yuki. That's kind of how I would rank it, more or less. Hulkenberg, probably just about my favourite, followed by Yuki. Again, Yuki's another driver which I think is someone that I quite trust, which I cannot believe I'm saying this after last season when he had a terrible seasons, particularly in terms of F1 fantasy, but he's really picked it up and turned around in terms of fantasy this year, and not just in terms of fantasy, in terms of actual real life racing. But yeah, I do think it is tight between Hulkenberg and Yuki for me. Like I said, I got Hulkenberg on here at the moment. I don't know. I need to have a proper think about my team as well, don't I? half an hour to go until the deadline, and I'm so busy like chatting to you, going through everything. I'm going to get to like 10 minutes before the deadline. I'm going to start panic and make a stupid decision, aren't I? I know it's going to happen. Right, let's keep going with the chat. Do you think Stroll? Oh, I've read that one. Right, where are we? No negative chip. I've just talked about. Top channel. Thank you, Renaud. Oh, Rob is in the chat. Latest weather update. Yes, weatherman Rob is here. Sunday will be sunny with light winds, with a high of 22 and 10% chance. Is that it? 10% chance of rain. Well, Rob has spoken, so yeah, I probably wouldn't bother with the no negative chip then. If there's that little chance of rain, that's almost like nothing basically. So yeah, should be a dry race by the looks of it, which is kind of interesting. DMG comes in underneath that. So I'm tempted not to use a no negative. Yep, exactly. And maybe final fix. Yeah, exactly. Tom, are you going with Sainz then? Oh, I don't know. He just sat there. He's just sat there to taunt me. Just like looking at him. He looks pretty smug, doesn't he? Not sure. There he is. He looks a bit more glum in that picture. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think, I don't know. I do think Perez is probably the safer, easier option. Ferraris, like I've already said earlier on the stream, the Ferraris haven't really sold it to me, but you know, we have seen Sainz perform well in the FP1, FP2, FP3 nevertheless, despite their potential wrong direction of setup. If they can get the setup right between, well, like right now as I'm talking, they're probably in Monaco going over all the data and trying to work out what the hell they want to do with their car. If they can nail the setup, I think Carlos Sainz could be a nice differential this weekend. It could be. I don't know. It's tempting. What else have we got in here? Do you need to play the final fix chip before qualifying starts? No. You can do it. That's the beauty of it. That's the whole. It's the unique chip that you can do it after qualifying. So you can see what happens in qualifying. Max Verstappen puts in the wall, which is not going to happen, but you never know. Max Verstappen puts in the wall in Q1, goes out. He's going to start at P20 on the grid. You can then, after qualifying's happened, as long as it's before the race starts, you can then swap out Max Verstappen, bring in Leclerc or whoever you want, and that's your chip done, dusted, and hopefully get you a good amount of points for that. No rain. Stroll versus Gasly for this race. Another question for the ages this season. Stroll versus Gasly, because they're the only sort of similarly priced drivers in that kind of bracket. For me, Stroll. I mean, let's have a look quickly at where Gasly is for P10 and the hypothetical. So Gasly is P6 and FP3, P9 and FP2, P14. So he's sort of grown. He's steadily going up. We can see the trend here. Yeah, P14 up to P9 up to P6. So you know, there's a lot of talk about growing into the weekend for these drivers and building your confidence. And you know, yeah, I can see. You know, although Gasly's not got the best option there on the hypothetical, I do think Gasly growing into the weekend, like I say, is definitely an option. But I think Lance Stroll's just in a quicker car, and he's done nothing to suggest that he's not going to perform this weekend. Like, you know, like I say, every time I was watching FP3, I saw a couple of times Stroll pop up on the read-ins with like a couple of purple sectors here or there. So I think Stroll is an absolutely fine option. I've taken a gamble, use the free chip if need be. So you mean like the final fix chip? Do you mean? I'm not sure. Jess, I'm tempted to change things up with a Verstappen, Perez, Stroll, Alonso, Gasly, Ferrari. Okay, so you're considering dropping. Okay, so that means you don't get a budget option. Okay, interesting. So you're talking about getting rid of them, bringing in them, cutting out the budget option altogether. And I've just lost your message. So Verstappen, Perez, Stroll, Alonso, Gasly. So you were going to put Gasly in this final slot. I mean, with 11.8 million. I mean, if you've got the money, which I think most people probably will have the money, over Gasly, I think I'd definitely go Norris if I was going to go with a team like this. And this is a team I had up on my screen earlier, and something I was looking at last night, and I was just thinking, like, I do like the look of this. It's another one of those high-risk ones, so it's like, do you really want to trust Ferrari this heavily after what we've seen so far through the practice sessions? You know, relying on both their drivers in terms of the constructor. I will say one thing, that the Ferrari pit crew have done pretty well, and they're likely to continue that trend and probably get you a few points in terms of fastest pit stops, that sort of thing. But then the Red Bulls are also sort of always kind of up there in terms of pit stops and that. So let's have a quick look at the pit stop thing actually. If we just scroll across. So yeah, it's almost neck and neck. Red Bull with 38 points and Ferrari with 36 points. So yeah, I think I don't know. It's tempting. And like I said, the team looks nice. It looks really nice. It looks like a nice variation. No budget drivers. Always looks good. But I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I'm not brave enough, personally. I'm not brave enough to go without the Red Bull constructor, I don't think. Um, So I think we're probably going to end up with a team that looks more like the old template, I'm afraid. So yeah, I think I'm pretty much going for this, but I think Perez is Perez the best option? Is this just the best team? Is it just the best team? Is this the best team again? The template is the best team, even when the race and pole is wide open. I think the template is just the best team, isn't it? Oh my god, this makes me sad. So yeah, DMG. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I was very keen to be different this weekend as well. Very keen, and you could still be different. Like I say, the ownership between Perez and Sainz is nice if Sainz can outscore Perez. And particularly if Sainz does do well, people are going to, say Sainz does do like a P1, P2, maybe even a P3. We could see sort of driver of the day possibilities for Carlos Sainz just because people are happy to see a Ferrari do well finally. So I don't know. Sainz over Perez. How much of a risk is it, honestly? How much of a risk is Carlos Sainz over Perez? If it doesn't go according to plan, should we have a look at what they've scored so far? So if we... Can I literally not even click? Oh my god, right, let's take some people out. Right, so why can't I? Because I still can't afford you. I just want to click on him, thank you. Right, so he's 19 points, 12 points. Actually, why am I even doing it this way? I've made a mess of this, haven't I? Let's just reset this, go back in there we go, before I completely cock it up. Let's have a look at the averages here. If we go to the trend, and we can have a look at Carlos Sainz. So average points per race has been 19 down to 15, 13, 15, 16. And then in comparison, Perez, who's right next to him, 28, 32, 38, 44, 41. It's such a difference, isn't it? It's such a difference. So if Perez does again do well and scores like 30, 40 points, and Sainz continues his average of sort of 15 to 20 points, then you're going to miss out on like 20 points, roughly. Which in the grand scheme of things probably isn't that bad when we're on average scoring about 300 points a week or whatever. But at the same time, there is the downside is like not major, and the only real downside is if Perez wins and Sainz crashes out or comes like P5 or something rubbish, relatively speaking. But there is obviously still a big upside as well. What was the team? I'm going to go Hulkenberg. A team like this, there is definitely a big upside going Carlos Sainz. If he does outscore Perez, then because of the ownership difference, you are going to be making a bit of a jump over people. And when the margins are so fine, when we're literally fighting over budget drivers every week, maybe Carlos Sainz is an option this weekend. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let's have a look at the poll. So yeah, it looks like Hulkenberg's the favourite of the budget. So let's end that. Maybe you can help me solve my next dilemma, which is Perez versus Sainz. Okay. I think there's something to be said for both of them. I think definitely the safe option is Perez for sure. But there's this desperation to be different. I don't know. Let's have another look at the chat. 10% chance of run, 10% of the area will receive 100% of the run. Yeah, interesting way to look at it. My theory: a lot of people will use a chip today, so it's a waste to use a chip in a predictable chip track. It's a long season, so use chips later when the majority of others have used their chips. Yeah, it depends what chip you're talking about. Like I say, I think for me personally, I think probably the only real chip I'm seriously looking at is probably the final fix chip, depending on how qualifying goes. I'm only going to use that in an extreme circumstance, like where Verstappen doesn't qualify in the top 10 or something. Otherwise, I probably won't use a chip indeed. So DMG, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Stroll, so just what I want to do. Yeah, the trouble is, I don't think I can possibly move away from Red Bull constructor. I think if I'm going to go differential at all, I think this is it. This is as differential as I'm going to go, is swapping out Perez and bringing in Carlos Sainz. Yeah, it's a close call. Like I say, if Perez in that Red Bull does what Red Bull do, and you are sat there with Carlos Sainz and double the amount of people own Sergio Perez and you don't have him, then you are definitely going to make a drop in rank. However, there is that possibility if Carlos Sainz, who I think is kind of as close to competing with Perez on any, as close on this track compared to any other track this season, that Carlos Sainz could potentially do better than Perez. So I think this is definitely an opportunity. It comes with some amount of risk for sure, and you have to accept that risk when you lock in your team in a few minutes' time before the deadline. But it is something I'm definitely considering. And I don't know. I don't know. It's definitely something I'm considering. Let's just put it that way. What's the time? I've got 20 minutes. Yikes. You also need to factor in Ferrari strategy gurus. Yeah, I know. Ferrari. It's not just about the car. It's not just about the Ferrari car. It's also about don't know. It's a whole host of reasons why I would or wouldn't pick a Ferrari driver. And if I'm going to go with a Ferrari driver, it would be probably Carlos Sainz, because Leclerc's just too expensive, and I don't want to warp my team around him, given my lack of confidence in them. I've spent the last 40 minutes talking about my lack of confidence in Ferrari, and now I'm talking myself into putting Carlos Sainz in my team. Crying out loud. Let's look at the poll. Oh, look at you guys. You're so sensible, aren't you? 85% on Perez. 85%. This is what I'm talking about, though. If you go Sainz and it pays off, he gets that extra few points. You're laughing against the 85% in this chat right now. We'll keep that poll up for a minute, see if that changes at all. You'd be counting on driver of the day if you go for Sainz. To some extent, like I said, I think he's done all right. Like when you look at the practice sessions, let's just scroll back across to Monaco. Look at the practice sessions. Like I say, it's kind of on par there with Max Verstappen. So he topped FP1, although Max Verstappen had a dodgy setup in FP1. Soon sorted out, and it's now topped the charts for FP2, FP3. But Sainz, even after his P1 there, is sat quite comfortably in P3, P4. Perez, again, kind of that building into the weekend. P4, dropped it a little bit, P7, and then back up to P2. How close are we talking as well? How far off is Sainz? He is 4/10 off Perez in that final little bit. Here he was like 4/10 up, and he was like miles ahead of everyone in FP1. That's kind of interesting, but yeah, it's a close call. I think if I'm going to be sensible, boring person, then I probably should just stick with Perez, and I'll cry myself to sleep later. But yeah, I'll just check the chat, see if there's anything else. I think, there's a few more things down here. Heavy Aston Martin, it could be risky in Monaco, so I'm tempted to hedge Gasly instead of Stroll. Yeah, I mean, there's two ways you can look at that. You can say you're hedging your bet by removing Stroll and like avoiding the triple up, but obviously if something happens to an Aston Martin driver and you're tripled up, it's going to hurt more. But by moving Stroll to Gasly, you're actually just having a bigger basket of trouble. So you're opening up your risk to a -20 is more likely, as opposed to getting hit hard with a -40, for example, if Stroll was to DNF. So yes, you're hedging your bets to some extent, but also increasing your risk of catching a DNF regardless. So you're more likely to catch a DNF, but be less penalised by it. If you go the triple up with Lance Stroll, you're less likely to catch a DNF, but if you do catch it, you're going to get hit harder. So there's kind of two ways of looking at that. Why is Hulkenberg the favourite? Because he's really good at qualifying, and he's done all right so far in the practice session. I say done all right. He's not done exceptionally well, but it's between Hulkenberg and brain's gone, Tsunoda. Could go Sainz and final fix of Perez if Sainz fails in quali. Yeah, potentially. It depends what the difference is. If you count a failure as like P5 for Carlos Sainz and Perez gets pole, is that? Yeah, I mean maybe that is worth a final fix, to be fair. So maybe or do you just leave it as Perez, the safe option is Perez, and then if Sainz does get like a random pole, then we final fix Perez into Sainz, and that way you probably still get a differential over quite a few people, but without taking the initial risk up front. That could also be a way of looking at it. So kind of just stick with the template, which looks like this, and then we'll see how qualifying plays out, and if Perez gets out qualified by Sainz by more than maybe a couple of positions, then it could be worth a final fix. And let me just check the time. We've got 15 minutes. It's starting to get to panic mode. Surely using past results is not accurate to go by teams and drivers out of position where they should be. Past results is not accurate to go by 4 teams and drivers out of position. I'm not entirely sure what that means. Sorry. Could go Sainz. Yeah, we just read that. The bet is high with Sainz, as you said. Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, 87% now on Perez. I do think there's quite a risk of going down that route, particularly now that there's no rain as well. And you play final fix after quali, right? Yes. Just to confirm, everyone who's in the stream right now, just to get you clear on this, final fix chip, you can activate it after qualifying has happened. It's the only chip you can do this for. Everything else has to be done before the deadline. The final fix chip, you can watch qualifying, see where everyone pans out, then you can activate the final fix chip, which is why it's potentially very effective this weekend in Monaco, where qualifying is crucial. It's not an interesting way to look at it. This is how weather forecasts work. So there's a 50% chance of rain. What? I'm sorry, David, you're confusing me. I can't be dealing with percentages like that right now whilst I'm trying to stream and work out my team. I don't need more of a headache when I'm trying to work out my team. I trust you, but I'm not worried about the rain, to be honest. If it rains, it rains. The drivers are used to it. It's fine. It'll be fine. Team 2, risk went for Max, Sainz, Perez, Alonso, Norris. Yeah, like I say, I do like Norris. If Norris was in that bracket with the likes of like Stroll or Gasly, I would definitely heavily consider Norris. I just think it's I just think he's just cost too much, and you kind of have to change your team a little bit too much to get Norris in. But I do expect Lando Norris to have a good weekend. Is an autopilot chip great in Monaco? It could be. It depends. Like, we thought it was going to be more open than it looks like it's going to be. Like, unless the Ferrari can sort themselves out, it looks like it's likely to be sort of a poll between Perez, Verstappen, and Alonso. Probably. In which case, autopilot kind of reduces its effectiveness. I'd rather use autopilot probably a bit more when there's a bit more variation in my team. Like if I was going to go with someone like Leclerc and then put the autopilot on. I don't know. I just don't think autopilot... I'm not going to use autopilot. I've decided on that much. Finally, I made a decision at long last that if I'm going to use anything, it's going to be final fix, and that depends on how qualifying turns out. Who's been the best budget on the street circuits? I mean, we've only really seen Baku, didn't we? And Baku, where are we? We've got to go back to Baku. So street circuits, Jeddah. Let's have a look. Let's have a look what happened in Jeddah. We'll look at the race. Is this year? Lost. Yeah, it's this year. 2023. So best of the budgets so far in the street circuits. Sonoda in Jeddah, followed very closely by Hulkenberg, to be fair, and then Guan Yu Zhou, to be fair. Like, all the budgets all clumped together, but Sonoda wins that one. Melbourne's the next street circuit. Sonoda again there, Guan Yu Zhou in P9. Hulkenberg gets that P7. So Hulkenberg wins that one, but Sonoda also doing well as Guan Yu Zhou. Miami, there's so many street circuits. Who else has done well here? So Sonoda again is in there. Hulkenberg dropped back a bit there. Guan Yu Zhou, so maybe Sonoda's edging it. Tough one. And then Monaco last year, he didn't do particularly well, did he? I apologise, by the way, if you can hear a crying baby in the background. That's just my life at the moment. Baby cries. Keep giving it food. It's happy for a bit, then it wants more food, then it cries again. That is life. But yeah, girlfriend's downstairs. Don't worry, baby is being attended to. Please don't call child services. Yeah, so Sonoda did not that great last year, did he? I can't remember what happened. Does anyone remember what happened last year in Monaco? Don't know, but in terms of budget, I think it's definitely between Hulkenberg and Sonoda. I think I'm going to go with Hulkenberg. I think I'm going to go with this team. You know, I need to actually make a decision very soon because it's about 10 minutes to the deadline. I think I'm just going to go with the template, and then with the option of looking to move Perez across to Carlos Sainz potentially if something happens, or if something happens to Verstappen, then I can move him down to whoever finishes on pole, basically, like whether that be Leclerc or a surprise pole from Hamilton or something like that. I don't know, but I think as boring as it is, I think as tempting as someone like Carlos Sainz is, I think I'm going with this team. Like, I think my final decision really, I think it's between Sonoda and Hulkenberg, and I think I'm leaning more towards Hulkenberg. My next decision is between Perez and Sainz, and my head is telling me Perez, my heart is telling me Sainz. I could do this, and then if Perez gets pole or whatever, and Sainz is out the running, then I can just final fix Sainz into Perez. And that would enable, I don't know. But then if Sainz does do better than Perez, then I just want to hold on to Sainz and save the final fix chip. Or I could have Perez in from the beginning, and if Sainz, gets a pole or whatever, Perez is not on the front row or whatever, then I could switch out to get Carlos Sainz in. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I think that's the final decision, Perez versus Sainz, and 88% of you think that's Perez is the right option. And I've once again neglected the chat. Let's have a look. Why are you so optimistic regarding Hulkenberg? Just because he's qualifying well. And qualifying is everything around Monaco. He's a good qualifier, and don't know. It is tight between him and Yuki. It's tight because I think Yuki's done all right. And if we go back, that is not the button I want to do. Press. If we go back and look at the qualifying predictor thing, Sonoda's pretty accurate as well. But the thing is, Sonoda 3 out of the 4 times has improved, whereas Hulkenberg 50% of the time has actually got worse. And I know it's a very small sample size, just 4 races, because I haven't included the sprint data. But over that short amount of time, we can see Sonoda's improving. What happened last year? Last year, Sonoda was really inaccurate, but then the AlphaTauri was quite a different beast back then. But 8 times he improved, 5 times he was worse. So overall, across the last season and a bit, Sonoda has improved from his practice times. And if we have a look at what he's done in practice so far, he is predicted in P14. So we could see Sonoda push it up towards, like I say, the periphery of Q3. I don't know. It's a really tight call, and we could be looking at literally the difference between like a point or two between Hulkenberg and Sonoda. So it's a bit of a shame that we. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for catching the stream. It's a bit of a shame that this is one of the main decisions we have to make every week at the moment, but that is the situation we face ourselves. So yeah, very tight between Sonoda and Hulkenberg. Tough one. No negative chip. I've already talked about the no negative chip pretty extensively. I've already used mine, so I'm not using it. But if you have it, then I wouldn't fault you for using it. I think there could definitely be some crashes. We've seen quite a few incidents already. But I think personally, I'm going to stick with the possibility of using the final fix chip. Another thing to consider is who is a great starter who won't risk getting overtaken and do stupid things at the start. Yeah. Who's it going to be? Who's more risky? Who's a more risky driver? Probably Hulkenberg. I don't know. They're both. None of them really scream risky to me that much, but I guess historically speaking, Hulkenberg is a bit more of an aggressive driver. Yuki just rages in the cockpit. I don't know. When you played no negative, did you just remove any drivers who scored no negative points or any negative points for all your drivers? When you played no negative, did it just remove any drivers who scored? It didn't remove any drivers. All no negative does, it means your drivers don't end up there. All it does is the final score that your drivers end up on doesn't go below 0. So even though Perez, for example, in Australia got -5 from qualifying, and I used a no-negative chip, that -5 still got counted towards my score because Perez finished with a positive score. The no-negative chip only stops you from going below 0 on the final total from your driver, which is makes it a lot less of a good chip in my mind. Has burned through their tyres. Fair point. When you play I think that's pretty much it. I guess the chat is drying up. People are probably getting ready to go watch qualifying. How much time? Oh my god, I got 6 minutes. Flipping heck. Right, decision time. I need to really have a think. You can watch me sweat it out for a minute. Sainz, Perez, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda. I think that's kind of what it boils down to. Yeah, I think it's Perez. And have that final fix option open to someone like Carlos Sainz if it doesn't pan out. And if Carlos Sainz does get pole or whatever and Perez isn't there and you don't use the final fix chip, it's still not like a massive difference. It's only really, I don't know. I feel like there's just too much risk, isn't there? But at the same time, is there going to be another race? Is there going to be another track where we can have this opportunity to even consider a driver over Perez like Carlos Sainz? Part of me just wants to bloody go for it, It'll be a good move. Burning for a time. I think I'll go Sainz. It'll be a good move. Okay, thanks for the vote of confidence there, Mr. Patel. I'll keep Perez in final fix only if it's worth it. Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting one. I need to make my decision really, really soon. I've got less than 5 minutes now. Let's say the time can. Yeah, it's literally 5 minutes on there, isn't it? I don't know. What are the final thoughts from people in the chat then? What are your final thoughts? Do it. This is what happens when I do these live streams. I end up making bad decisions. Okay, I think this happened. What was the race last year? I think it was it Monza possibly? No, or maybe it was. I can't remember. But it was a tight call between Norris and Carlos Sainz last year, and I ended up going Norris. And to be fair, Norris did well, but Carlos Sainz still outscored him. I think it was Monza maybe. I don't know. Yeah, so I ended up on stream. Everyone kind of pushed me to go Lando Norris, and I kind of went for it. And although he still scored me points, I ended up losing points. So could that be the same thing happening? I know I shouldn't rely on past events to predict what's going to happen right now, but I don't know. Carlos Sainz is an option. It's just an option. Oh, look, everyone is like, oh yeah, just Sainz will do great. Sainz will do great. Play it safe. It's a long season. Yeah, this is the thing. It is a long season. We're even like a quarter of the way through. I don't think we are we? Not even a quarter of the way through the season yet. Yeah, I feel like it's probably just more sensible to go with this and then final fix. If something happens to Perez or Verstappen, bring in Sainz or Leclerc or whoever it is, maybe Hamilton if he does a stonking qualifying lap, and then kind of be done with it. Let's check the time. 4 minutes. Yeah, I think I'm gonna. But this is the only opportunity, man. This is the only opportunity. It's the only opportunity really to go different, and then it's just kind of Perez the rest of the season. This could be, after this race, almost certainly if I go with Carlos Sainz, I'll just switch it back to Perez, and kind of be happy with it. No, I think Perez is still the right option, but it's just so boring. It's so boring. But I think I'm going to Hulkenberg over Yuki. I think going further along the season, I think that Yuki is going to be a better option than Hulkenberg. But I think by that theory though, then do I think Carlos Sainz? No, I don't know. But I think Hulkenberg is the better option potentially for this. Is he? Oh, I don't know. It could be Sonoda. Jeez. Too much for a gamble, even for Monaco. Yeah, so I'm just reading the chat. Rely on everyone else getting bored and stick to the plan. Yeah. I mean that's it. That's kind of what I've been advocating this season so far is stick to the triple up. And I've got 2 minutes, so yeah, I think I need to lock this in. And yeah, I'm sorry it's so boring. And if Carlos Sainz does well, then I'll regret it a little bit. But I think we're going to do the Albon to Hulkenberg. Yeah, we're going to lock that one in. So there's the team. DRS boosters on Max Verstappen. And I'm very much open to the possibility of using the final fix. Particularly if Carlos Sainz sticks it on the front row and Perez isn't anywhere to be seen. I could definitely do the Perez to Sainz. I feel so disappointed. In myself. This is an opportunity, man. But 1 minute to go. Yeah, not your fault, blame F1. Yeah, to be fair. Yeah, I mean, F1 messing up the prices has made me feel this way. They've made me depressed. I hope you're proud of yourselves, F1. Thanks for keeping things fun while the season's so boring. Well, thank you, Jess, for tuning in. Thanks for your input in the chat. Go with your gut. Don't be disappointed. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I am disappointed because, I don't know, I'm here for the points, and I think this is the best opportunity for the points, given the strength of the Red Bull, unfortunately, and the way the pricing is. But yeah. I think the deadline's pretty much going for it. I've gone for Sainz. Ooh, nice one. But should I go for it? No, I'm not gonna go for it. I know it's disappointing. It's boring, but I'm just gonna stick with the triple up and go final fix. That's it. Stop trying to push me into it, chat. Don't do it. I think that's the deadline gone, isn't it? It's 3 o'clock on my phone, so I think I've missed the opportunity. It's probably locked in now. So there we go. That's the team. These are my other teams. I haven't even paid attention to my other teams, so yeah, not really much excitement going on there. But yeah, that is the team. Not much has changed. I think it's just refreshed itself. So yeah, just a simple change of after all that chit chat is literally I've moved Albon to Hulkenberg, and I'm just gonna hope for the best. Keep your eyes out for what happens in qualifying, and use the final fix chip if you think it's appropriate. If anything happens to the likes of Perez or Verstappen, I'll almost certainly be using the final fix chip. I'm sorry that it's a boring end to the boring end to the stream where I'm just gonna stick to the template and do nothing basically. But thanks very much anyway for tuning in and keeping me interested in the chat. It's been really nice just to chat things through for you, get voice my opinions, I guess. And thank you everyone for listening. Just final few thoughts in the chat. It's not just F1's fault, it's Ferrari and Mercedes' fault for not getting their packages right. Yeah, it's all their fault. It's all their fault for making F1 fantasy boring. Alright, thanks very much everyone then. I guess we're going to go watch some qualifying. Team's locked in now, deadline has gone. Thanks very much, and we'll see you for Spain, where is it going to be more of the same, or is it going to be some more pain? I don't know, we'll see. Have a good weekend everybody. Bank holiday weekend here in England, so enjoy the bank holiday. Have a nice Monday off if you've got it off. If you're working, then hope it's not too bad for you. But yeah, anyway, that's it. Deadline is gone. This is the team. I chickened out, coward's way out on picking Carlos Sainz. So yeah, but final fix. Don't forget to use the final fix if it becomes appropriate. Keep your eyes peeled. Thanks very much for watching. I'm going to end the stream now, and I'll see you shortly for some more F1 fantasy chat with some Spain build up. Thanks everyone, and bye.